what is my purpose? I don't know what my purpose is. We all have the same purpose. We are all here to learn self acceptance. Every one of us, not every sentient being, but every human one of us is here to learn self acceptance because accepting others on a soul trajectory is easier than accepting ourselves completely. That's why we have to do so many lifetimes, right? Hi there. Thank you for joining me for an episode of Intuition, Your Success Compass. I'm so grateful you're here and that you're watching, subscribing, dingy dingy, the little bell thing, or listening on whatever platform that is available. There are so many now, aren't there? I'm just grateful that you're here and that we get to spend this time together because even though I'm sitting here talking to myself, it always feels like I'm spending time with anybody who's going to be listening. And I appreciate it. And especially since we have such busy lives. And that's what this episode is going to be about. Not about busyness necessarily, but a question that came up for me in regards to my own life, but then in like reflecting on what most of my clients deal with and what we talk about on a weekly basis, which is, are you living a full life or are you living a life that is filled? So is your life full? Does it feel like does it feel full like, does it feel like it's got meaning, that you feel purposeful, that you feel joy, or does it feel filled? Like one more thing to do, to do, to do. I love my to-do lists and because I believe we should celebrate everything that we do, dishes, laundry, major accomplishments. Sometimes those are the major accomplishments. I think we should celebrate things because this part of being human is a gift. And sometimes it feels like it's wrapped in some really ugly paper, but it is a gift. And often I'm talking to people about how they are just not finding space for themselves in life and how it seems to be flying by. I mean, I can attest to that. My daughter is going to be 31 this year. 31. Actually, by the time this episode comes out, she will have already turned 30. So it does really go by fast. I know that's something that young people don't always want to hear, but it's true. And I want to encourage that more and more of us are living full lives, not just lives that are filled. And I am grateful to have experienced both. And I also have a real challenge with not filling my life up with all of those things because I so love a list. I so love a to-do list. But I'm going to talk about some of the things that can cause problems if you're not having an intention or setting an intention to live a life that is full. And before I get started, let me just say no one can determine what full is for you. You are the one who has to determine it, and that can seem like a big responsibility, but it can also be very freeing. And I used to be someone who would say, I can't imagine why people don't like people, why they wouldn't want to talk to everybody in the store. And I can't imagine why you wouldn't want to be on stage and all of this stuff. And then I grew up and then I became more aware of other people and how amazing it is that we have this diversity in our world. And now I can't imagine not seeing people as individuals and that what I may like, they don't like. And I had the benefit of that because I have a few people in my life who would often say out loud to me, I would never want to do that. I don't want to work out like that. I don't want to stand on stage. I don't want to talk about tough subjects. And I'd be like, well, who's asking you to? Like I was genuinely confused and felt like, wow, I must not really care about people because I just want to say to them, that's me living my full life. But I didn't have those words. Like what I said to them is, well, you don't have to. And it almost felt like they were trying to diminish me and say, don't do those things. And in some cases they were. But for the most part, I think it was just their fear and them being worried that I was going to ask them to do that. So I learned to say to people, this is what I like in life. This is what I want to do. I am not asking you to do it if you'd like to join me or if you have an interest in something that I'm already doing. Listen, I can talk. I am happy to have a conversation about it and to share what I have learned about creating a full life. I see this so much in my clients and in friends and people I talk to, and that there's a genuine confusion about how to do that. You become aware, perhaps, that your life doesn't feel like you thought it would feel, or you're not having all that much fun, and you know that, but you don't really know how to change it. Well, the question I would ask is your life filled? Is it filled with a busyness? Is it filled with too much scrolling? Is it filled with the tendency to make everybody else the priority and to not consider what it is that you would like? And it's difficult to put a pause on it when you're already in the process of being busy, but it's not impossible. And I feel like the faster stuff moves, our technology, our days, the more things that your kids are interested in or involved in, for that matter, like the sports and everything, the faster time goes because there's no pause. There's no space in between words or between statements. And you can see that in people too. They're just so fried that it's like there's an auto responder that happens and people just automatically give their opinion without thinking about it. And that's because life is so busy. Like from the minute you get up until the minute you go to bed, it could be crammed. And one of the things I have asked people when they said their life doesn't feel fulfilling or happy or any, I ask them to do a time study. I ask them to pay attention to how did they spend their day. And this is not for punitive reasons at all. It's not how I fly. It's to become aware of where your attention is going, where you could be avoiding other things. And we'll get to that in the tendency to follow trends or to follow a pressure that seems to be there about busy bees, right? So I used to read this book and the busy bee, and I'm like, want to be always doing. I want to be, literally be in my life. So there are, I think, reasons that we get into this practice of being busy besides the fact that we're inundated with communication, with technology, with other people's opinions. There's just so much that's going on that sometimes it seems like it's impossible to have any of that awareness for yourself. I am always going to suggest that it starts first thing in the morning because before the day runs away with itself, it's good to have that check in. Now, I'm also going to say it can be 5 minutes. It does not need to be in meditation for 2 hours. And who has that? Well, some people might, but that's not what this whole podcast is about. But it is going to be about you starting to pay attention to why you may be creating more busyness in your life than actually needs to be there. So when I work with someone, and myself included, I have found some reasons, some raisins or some reasons. I have found some reasons that we stay busy or get busy. We learn to be busy, right? Your value comes from how much you can cram into a day. I don't subscribe to that. But however, again, I have lived it. So that we'll go there, right? For the first thing, there's social pressure. At least in our society here in the States, it's often glorified, the busyness of life, a symbol of productivity and success. And yes, I know I talk about success, but I talk about success on your terms. What does success feel like for you? What does it mean to you? Because we each have a different level of success that our souls and our human selves would like to experience here. but there's a societal pressure to appear busy, even if you're not, to meet the expectations and what feels like gaining approval from others. And I bring these up not in judgment, but because of awareness. I know sometimes I don't know why I'm doing something. I'm just doing it out of a habit. And that happens to most of us humans. And I feel like if we call attention to it, sometimes when people say, "Have you ever noticed?" I'm like, yes. That's why comedians, like a really good comedian, can crack you up because they're going to make the observations that maybe you've been trying to make, but you just couldn't connect the dots. And then you find it funny because you're like, yeah, that absolutely happens. So, another reason I find people have difficulty in slowing down enough to ask, is my life filled or is my life full? Are along the same lines like cultural norms. So, in some cultures or industries, constant busyness, the one to promote or a badge of honor, and it perpetuates a cycle. And then, we can get addicted to that busyness and to that message of here's my value because I'm busy. I have found myself like when Michael say, "How was your day?" I have found myself almost giving him a bullet point presentation about what I did today. Like I had to justify what I was doing. And I hear myself do it, and then I'll think, "What are you doing?" Because it wasn't in a sharing, "Oh, this is what I did, and this is what I discovered, or guess what I figured out in this program." It wasn't. It was reporting that I did this to justify my day because there's no one above me in my company except spirit. So on some level, it was a bonding thing, but it was also I could feel like, "Is it okay? Is it okay? Do you approve?" I'm like, "Oh boy, I better look at that." That's why I say this comes about. A lot of these topics come about from my own experience and what I've worked through and what I've understood about the human condition, spirituality, and all that. So walk along with me as I expand, I suppose. And to that point, insecurity. We may become busy or report a heightened level of busyness because again, our self worth may be related to what we've accomplished in a day. And we may feel a need to prove ourselves. And you may end up overloading your schedule to be what I consider more in service than of service. Like you just have so much that you're actually not doing anything really well. You're just over producing, and sometimes not even producing, but acting busy. So that insecurity is something that I would work with someone when I see this presenting and ask them to identify their value based on things not related to productivity or to proving that they're valuable to have around. And it can be, again, societal, but there's also can be a peer pressure. And this I see show up in competitive things, but also in medical school, law school, and even in the career after in those areas of academia. Oh my goodness, is it very present in academia? I have quite a few deans that I work with and a president of a college, and oh my goodness, provost, a president. And it's there because that's been indoctrinated, right? But I'm not suggesting that we not be productive or that we not be proud of what we've created. But a fulfilling life does not come from productivity alone. It comes from spending time with self. It comes from spending quality time with those that you love. And it comes from a clarity about what's important to your life. And that might be hard to figure out. Like you may not know what truly fulfills you. And to that, I say congratulations, because that's where you get to be curious and you get to ask yourself questions. Well, would I like this? Do I like this? Because it can be very difficult to identify if you don't know your own opinion, if you do not understand what matters to you. And that takes pausing and stopping and asking some questions. And that's where a good coach comes in too. And then if you don't have that clarity, you'll often, all of us included, will often default to a busy lifestyle because then you get external validation and distractions. Um, I, here's some clarity for you. I have it's someone that I've worked with very closely with their business, and they're like, I couldn't produce the content you do. I said, you absolutely could, and I can show you how. And I can show you how it doesn't take as much time as it looks like it takes. But I had to get clear on how I wanted to spend my time and how my life would be more fulfilling if I wasn't filling everything up. And then I had to work on my perfectionism. That's a whole nother level. So there's also, that maybe there's a lack of time management skills. One, maybe it wasn't taught. And that's why I asked for a time study, because when you become aware of what you've done in the day or how much time something took, I always think it's going to take less time than it does. And I've learned to build in buffers and learn to put some time around things because I don't want to feel like I screwed something up or that, I'm dumb because I didn't get it done in the time that I thought. I've just learned that it's going to take a lot longer than I anticipated. Most things do. And then I get to be pleasantly surprised when they don't. But some people genuinely struggle with time blindness, shifting from a filled life to a full one because the self-awareness about how their day was spent, or maybe they're just not aware that time consciousness is not their forte, so they have to build in some skill sets that are necessary. We joke in this house, Mike does not have a clock installed in his head. And I have had to learn patience about that. And I know it's something he doesn't do to annoy me. It's just not there. I've watched it. I've watched it not be there. But when I say we need to leave at this time, or you said we were meeting them at this time, so let's do that, he's right there. It's just that I have to borrow his spatial concepts and he has to borrow my timeliness. And finding a balance in that is another way to feel full in a relationship, and recognizing I have skills he doesn't and he has skills I don't. We'll learn from each other. So you can do the same for yourself or within your partnership or co-work or your co-owner of your business or whatever it is. Like, the understanding that there might be a lack of time management skills there means you get to find them. And there are great apps. I use Focus Keeper because it allows for built-in breaks. So I'll set it up to run for usually 4 segments with a 5-minute break in between because I use a kneeling chair and sometimes my legs go to sleep. So I need to get up and move around. Besides, it's just good to move around every hour. And I'll set that up, put it on my phone, put on my phone on Do Not Disturb, and run those 20-minute increments, or it might be 1 full hour increment if it's something like this where I'm recording. So being able to identify that your life is filled with things that might not necessarily light you up is a truthfulness. And it's something that I believe we owe our souls, because your soul chose you to come into this physical experience to learn as much as possible. So I feel an obligation to my soul to learn as much as I can and to have fun, because the soul is filled with joy. It just wants to learn everything. It doesn't know sadness. It doesn't know ego. It doesn't know um, competition or anything like that. It just wants to have fun. And my intention is for my human self to learn how to be more like my soul self. So another reason you may fill your life, and this is the most common one, which is why I left it to the end, is avoiding uncomfortable emotions. When we're busy, we don't have to deal with those things, right? They get stuffed down. And that's not healthy, but we do it. And staying busy provides a temporary escape from addressing the feelings. Like, have you ever felt like the tears were right here? And you're like, well, I'm just going to go get that and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do that because you're like, oh, I can see it there, but I don't want to deal with it. It's kind of like if you've ever gotten a collection letter or something too, like you're like, I see it there. I know I have to deal with it, but I'm just going to avoid it. So uncomfortable emotions, it can provide a decent excuse or reason to stay busy. It might be sadness, but it also might be anxiety or it might be existential questions. I hear this question so often, I'm just going to dispel it right now. What is my purpose? I don't know what my purpose is. We all have the same purpose. We are all here to learn self acceptance. Every one of us, every human one of us, not every sentient being, but every human one of us is here to learn self acceptance because accepting others on a soul trajectory is easier than accepting ourselves completely. That's why we have to do so many lifetimes, right? So you can understand why it would be easy to spend a lot of time distracting yourself, avoiding emotions, if you had that existential question that has been put forth by some maybe unknowing, let's give them benefit of the doubt, spiritual teachers and stuff, like you must find your purpose. Well, your purpose is self acceptance. How you get there is very different, and it's different for every one of us. We all have a different path of how we get there. And that's why I said your success is your success, right? I can't tell you how to get to self acceptance. I can help you get there. I can give you all the tools in my toolbox, but you actually have to do the work. And when we're in a practice of being busy and avoiding emotions, it doesn't allow you to, it doesn't allow any of us, rather, to hear, feel, intuit, know what might bring about full life. And I do believe that some of this is related to aging. The more experience, life experience you have, there is a certain level of chemistry and biology and lifetime experience that leads us to this place. But I just don't think that it has a specific timeline. I know some such amazing people who are in their teens that are like, I don't want to live that busy life. I want to live something that's fulfilling. And I want to matter and I want to contribute, but I don't want to get caught in this rat race. And did the last 3 years not prove that to us? We're all exhausted. We are all exhausted. And even at levels that we may not understand fully yet, and not just pandemic wise. This is, our life and our brains not quite ready for all of this input that is coming into us, into our personal computer systems, meaning our brains and our hearts and everything. So that's why I wanted to do this episode too, because it's can be hard for someone to go from an experience of life where everything is go, 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 busy, 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 avoid, 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 to presence. And that's why I say 5 minutes is good. You don't have to sit there for half an hour. You don't have to spend so much time asking yourself, who am I and what do I want? That was a course I taught once. You don't have to do that all the time, but you do have to have some type of practice of asking yourself, what is a full life rather than a filled life? And am I living that? Because if you're living solely a filled life and you're not paying attention to anything, it will show up. It's eventually going to tap you on your head. And it might show up like anxiety. And maybe you are led to a fantastic therapist, which, good job, good job, where they start asking these questions because the questions aren't coming from within. But what happens if we're just striving for a filled life, filled with stuff, filled with stress, filled with living that Instagram life persona, which nobody really stop believing crap. It's going to lead to burnout. it's going to lead to literally your life force energy burning it, and then you croak. So constant busyness not only leads to a physical and emotional exhaustion, it leads to a spiritual one. And it leads to one where there's a distance from yourself, your knowing self, to your soul self. And we all feel that. Every one of you is wildly intuitive. Every one of you has abilities to tap in, most especially to your own essence. And if you're going, and your mental health and your physical health is declining because of that, your body has to pay attention to that first. It cannot access your intuitive health. And you do have to take care of that. I wouldn't even suggest that someone really develop their intuition if those other areas are burnt. But life force energy is really important. And it often is the first thing to go if we're living a filled life and not a full life. And to that point, there will be a lack of self discovery. It's a good, like I said earlier, a good way to avoid emotions. It's a good way to avoid calling out our own thoughts, the critic, the negative voice in there, because it hinders the process of self discovery. Being busy, it'll just get in the way, and maybe you don't have time for that hobby that you feel would light you up, or working out, or creating healthy meals, or joining a dance group, or learning to sing, or like I'm doing, riding horses. Maybe you won't have given yourself permission to explore what might help you grow. And in your busyness, you're like, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. And I have seen this so many times in the last 23 years that I'm doing this. As soon as I make it actually a condition of coaching that people pause, spend time with themselves, and develop some of that self discovery. I mean, I don't know why you're coming to me if you don't want self discovery. So I believe that if someone is seeking me out for coaching, their knowingness within actually wants to go there. They just don't know how to do it. And that's my job to help them do it. But I have found every time when I ask for that, massive changes happen in their lives. It's just scary as hell to say, I'm going to pause when you've been given that message that you have to keep going. It's almost like you have to keep spinning the log or you're going to fall off. Well, you know what? That water is only a couple feet deep anyway. You're not going to drown. You'll be fine. The self discovery, if it can become something that's exciting, can help to fill your life with things that are more engaging and more life giving. I never, that's too strong of a statement. I didn't think seeing the squash that's growing out in my garden right now would bring me such joy. I knew I would feel accomplished and I would feel proud of myself for growing my own organic veggies and everything. But I didn't think I'd feel lit up. But it's just amazing. And I actually say I have to go visit my squash because it's right now. Uh, It'll eventually get to be bigger, but it's so cute. And that is part of the self-discovery for me this year of what brings me joy. Not always about like the bottom line. It's not all about business, so as much as I love my work, it's not all about that. And yet it contributes to it because I understand what a full life for me feels like. And then I can help others to create a full life for themselves based on theirs. Because if you're not having that self-discovery, conversations with yourself, time with yourself, you're going to have shallow relationships. They're going to be superficial because busyness often means we don't have time to cultivate relationships. And I see people jump relationships, right? Like they'll jump from people to people because they actually only feel like they have time for the superficial. So as soon as anything starts to get a little bit more than superficial, they're out the back door. So busyness can also protect us a little bit by helping us to avoid deep, loving, enriching relationships. And that doesn't mean you have to spend tons of time with them. I have the most amazing girlfriends. Like I have just a lovely, lovely. it's a small group and it's a beautiful group. What's really fun to me is like none of them overlap. Like, they know of each other, but they don't overlap. And for me, that's so fascinating because I love people who have other experiences to bring to the table, right? And having the deep, rich relationship that I have with each of these friends does not mean that we're in each other's pocket, but we stay in contact and we communicate and we ask how you're doing. And we don't want to know, we want to know how your day's gone. Like, I want to know what Kelly and the kids are up to, but I don't want to stay on that surface level. I want to go deeper. What's going on with you? How are you feeling? What's going on with your life? When are you moving back to my area? Subliminal message to the Navy. Eventually, those shallow relationships will wear on you too. And that's brilliant because then you start to realize, oh, I don't need people around me, but I do want the relationships that are connected because in busyness, I've become spiritually disconnected. Perhaps there's a void there for you. And maybe that's what draws you to this podcast. It's a little bit spiritual, it's a little bit practical, it's got some humor, and you learn about my squash that's growing out there. Oh, the cucumbers are so good. And the peas. Tomatoes are just starting to show up. This is the stimulating content you come here for. But it is, the patience it took to start all of that from seed and to cultivate it literally and to ask it what it needs. We got a lot of rain this year, so being very careful about everything being, stretched out so nothing's rotting. Like the attention that was paid there is the similar attention that we pay to ourselves and finding a spiritual connection with each plant and asking it what it needs. And then some of them, got to go because they didn't make it. That's life too. But there's spiritual guidance in everything that we ask or everything that we endeavor to do. And that then can bring us a sense of that purpose that you're seeking. And it can bring an attentiveness to life that is often lacking. And I think what leads to a lot of depression, actually, and a lot of sadness, the chemical ones aside, because biology, but having a hectic lifestyle not only wears on your adrenal system and the cortisol creation, diminishes the spiritual connection because, like I said before, your physical self and your mental self have to come first, that survival thing. So often asking what I want, it's put on the back burner. But you know what's really amazing about this is it can be done free. It can be done things like this, listening to a podcast or watching it on YouTube. It's free. It can be done by taking 5 minutes in the morning before you even talk to anybody, as you wake up in the morning, tapping into yourself and giving yourself the permission to ask, what is it that I need today? What is it that I want? How do I want my energy to look? Exploring your inner dialogue, your inner self, asking yourself, what would matter to me today? Self-awareness is going to be an absolute necessity for a full life because otherwise you're just going through the motions and you're not experiencing a full life. And it will help you to align your actions with your desires. Like you can have desires, but if there's no action, it doesn't come about. In my compass coaching, I talk about the desires of the soul, which is the north, the applying it, which is your physical self in the south, and then the west is where we've come from. And it gives you ideas of your wiring, of your past, of your previous experiences. But if you don't head to the east to do some action, those desires have got nothing. They're not going to come to fruition. So we have to prioritize that pause, which brings me to this pause so that I can tell you about some products we got going, some events happening, and bring you a little bit more information about Vicky Baird Coaching. So are you ready to invest in yourself and level up your personal, professional, and spiritual life? Yeah, I thought so. That's why I created empowering worksheet bundles. Right now, there are 4 and more that you can take advantage of over at the shop. One is overcoming anxiety, or at least quiet down a little bit, define your client avatar, getting to know me, and achieving work success. I created these empowering worksheets so you can learn practical techniques to understand your anxiety, to shift it, to define your ideal client, to understand, gain clarity on your strengths and your goals, and to achieve success in all areas of your life. And whatever success means to you, you'll have the tools you need to get started, and then you can build on that with the other bundles that are in the collection at vickibaird.com. Thanks for sticking around or fast forwarding. It's fine if you fast forward. I do the same thing on some of the podcasts. I listen to the ones that catch my attention especially on the news podcasts and stuff. 30, 30, 30. Go ahead, 30 seconds. I'm okay with that. So as you decide that you would like to have a full life, there does have to be some prioritizing. You can call it mindfulness, you can call it self-reflection, you can call it time with yourself. I don't care what you freaking call it. Just prioritize it. And again, 5-minute increments is fine and you can build on. But if you don't do it at all, you won't get anywhere. You just won't. When you take that time, it can help you to appreciate life's simple pleasures, like a squash. I didn't create any magic that squash has lived through except to put it in the dirt and make sure it was watered. Its brilliance was already within, but there's a simple pleasure and I feel like simplicity is where a lot of people are focusing and creating more of an intention to live that way, to live intentionally, to live simply. And maybe we just swung the pendulum too far into all the stuff, all the ease, the drive-through lifestyle. And now there's a desire for simplicity. I've been making my own bread. I have to eat gluten-free until at least I heal this gut of mine. And I've been making my own naan every week because it started to feel really awful to eat anything that came from the freezer section of gluten-free stuff. It's just, they might have taken the flour out, but they put a lot of other crap in. So I found this recipe that has very minimal stuff, and I do the gluten-free naan and I make it every Sunday. And now I'm making my own cashew milk. And yes, I've asked myself, what is going on here? And I realized it was the desire for simplicity, not only in the products I was consuming, but in my own life. There's something very grounding about making your own bread. And it took me less time than it takes me to drive to the grocery store and get stuff. But it cooks very fast. And the same with the cashew milk. If you want any of the recipes, let me know. I'm happy to share them with you. And it also creates meaningful goals for me because the meaningful goal is to have this stuff available to me the rest of the week. So that means that I have to take time to do this on the weekends. And what that has done is it's brought a centering into my life, the goals that resonate with my values and how I want to vibrate intuitively, because if you're putting a lot of preservatives and stuff, it'll block your intuitive centers, not to mention your body. So whatever your goals may be, setting meaningful ones create that full life feeling, because once you achieve them, I always recommend small micro movements matter. Once you achieve them, you feel more full. You get to feel full. And again, it'll help you to cultivate relationships because you'll no longer be satisfied with those superficial. You can still do it for a short period of time because that might be necessary, but you'll no longer be satisfied by them. And you'll be drawing in people into your life that resonate, that bring their own sense of vitality to you. And it creates a desire for lifelong learning, to live a full life, to ask yourself what matters to you every day. It's about learning. It's about learning about yourself. It's about learning how to improve your life. It's about learning about other people. It's about learning about science or what's going on in your political realm. Who knows what you'll be interested in, but it lights up that life force energy to help you identify when things aren't feeling full. And you will get really good at it. And it'll take less and less time for you to identify what resonates and what doesn't resonate. When you do this practice of, am I living a filled life or a full life? If once you start weeding things out, you will get really good at figuring out what lights you up and what doesn't. Who do you want to be around? What do you want to read? Don't be surprised if you pick up a book and you read a couple chapters and you're like, nah, I'm done. Or you start watching a show and you're like, thought it was something it wasn't. Because each time you do that, you strengthen your capability to understand, is this worth my time? You know, we do have lifetimes, but we also have finite time in these bodies. I don't know about you, done wasting. I'm done wasting my time on things that don't light me up. If there's emotions that come up that don't light me up, that's fine, even exciting, because it's letting me know that I'm trying to clear something. But embracing this idea of learning, it's learning about yourself, it's learning about your surroundings, it's learning about your soul's path, and it's learning about a new hobby. It's learning about a different perspective. I have been asking myself before commenting to really feel somebody's perspective. Just last week, or no, it was this week actually, somebody was complaining about Mercury retrograde, and I almost typed in the text, oh, I love Mercury retrograde. And then I realized the industry that they're in is going through a really tough time right now. And I'm like, you are not going to show up and say, I love the little bugger. I get so much done when they're facing unemployment. You're not doing that, Vicky. So that idea of other people's perspective and embracing the learning of that has been an intention for me for the last few months. Oh, I'm having so much fun because as an intuitive, it can get tricky for me to feel what's mine and what's somebody else's. So this is an exercise that I challenge myself to do so that I'm not presuming somebody else's stuff. However, that is bringing a fullness to my life because then I'm able to ask questions. I'm able to consider people more. And that's kind to them. But it's really making me feel like, all right, I got this. I'm doing a good job being human. So I would love for you to consider, is your life filled? Busyness, not really fulfilled. It's not really full. And will be a blend of both. I'm not saying that we have to go to one or the other, right? We're gonna just walk around, everything's pie in the sky, wonderful, hunky dory. You can have a filled life of experiences and interactions and have them be full, have them be connective. And that's what I'm asking you to assess about your own life. Where are you on that continuous continuum, to be a little redundant? Ask in your community, ask in your friends. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below or send them to me, Vicky Baird Coaching, on all the social platforms. Thank you so much for joining me here. And I wish you the best of weeks. And I will see you either in the live or back here next week. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Intuition, Your Success Compass. I appreciate you being here. If you would like more information about developing your intuitive skills, removing those blocks, and creating the life that feels the most successful to you, then head on over to vickybaird.com. That's VICKIBAIRD.com. And check out the courses, the groups, and the Spaces app that will allow you to be part of our community and know about upcoming events and specials. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next episode.